I have to take my glasses off to read. So I'm going to read you something out of Citizens Creek, and so that it doesn't require any setup, it's right at the beginning. And I'll just launch right into it. Alabama, 1822. His master's voice, testy, from the direction of the main house. He had to obey, eventually, but pretended not to hear, giving himself time, sliding his hand along the stomach line from dewlap to udder, feeling for an unfamiliar bulge or irritated patch. Good. Nothing for worry. He was just turned 12, mostly a man. Tom. Hajo chewed a lazy cud, her eyes calm. She still showed no signs of shakes, thank the Great Spirit. A week ago, when the cow refused her suckling and turned from the grass at feed time, he'd worried she'd caught milk sickness. But now he thought it nothing more than a passing malady, without potential to hurt the tribe. He personally hand-fed Hajo grain mixed with oil from the dried ripe seeds of the flax plant in the way of Old Turtle, and already saw improvement in both appetite and movement. Tom! He patted Hajo on the rump, not daring to ignore the call again. Back directly, he promised in Muskogee, and then again in English. He practiced every chance, the words in both languages true on his tongue. Tom sped cross pasture and nudged Old Turtle where he nodded under a moss-draped live oak close to the sluggish stream. Chief Yargi calls, Tom said. I'm gone from the herd. Old Turtle tightened his lips and squinted hard at Tom. The intense sun and passing years had turned his skin leathery, burnished to the color of dried figs, his expression unyielding. Don't show too smart, boy. Mind your tongue around master. He calls for his Hilishaya, bragged Tom. Second healer, he immediately corrected, not wanting to offend. Next to you, best in the tribe. The advance of blindness and age slowed his mentor, but roomy-eyed Old Turtle was still better in the healing of cattle than the most able-bodied man in Alabama, black or Indian. And Tom was the young Hilishaya of the 500 cattle in the herd, having watched Old Turtle minister to livestock on first Master McIntosh's plantation, and now among the upper creeks on Chief Yargi's plantation. You and me, we're as much slave on this place as the last, though the master be more tolerable here, said Old Turtle. But we're Creek too, insisted Tom. He touched the red strings in his turban for luck. We are what we are, owned by tribes not the same as tribes, said Old Turtle. Straight off now and see to what the chief wants, and don't overstep. Tom followed the banks of the Alabama River, tromping through the tall grass in the direction of the chief's house. Two unfamiliar horses lazed in front of his master's log cabin. He knew now why he'd been called. Visitors. 4 figures stood in an awkward knot outside the house, waiting, a different flavor of annoyance written across each distinctive face, Indian, black, and white. He caught the eye of the other Tom on the plantation, a tall pecan-colored slave 2 years his senior, already sprouting the beginnings of a mustache on his upper lip, caught up in the net of the same name. The other Tom answered the call more quickly, most probably from the stable where he shod the tribe's ponies. Chief Yargi threw up his hands when he saw Tom. His master didn't take to strangers, especially English-speaking strangers. Yargi was full-blood, devoted more to old ways than new, and if the chief could have lived his life through without ever seeing a white face or being vulnerable to the confusing ways of the Wachinas, he would have died a man content. What took so long, asked Yargi in Muskogee. Cattle trouble, said Tom. He thought of Old Turtle's warning and said nothing more. Chief Yargi waved away the other Tom with an impatient gesture. They talk crazy, he said to Tom. The short white man was smaller than the chief, dressed in a mishmash of clothing, some Indian, some store-bought cloth, and American fashion, like Tom had seen before on the old plantation. The dark-skinned man wore a feathered turban, a blanket wrapped around his body, Cherokee style, and breeches with fur around the bottom. "I am Yataka." The black stranger spoke in thick-tongued Muskogee, so heavily accented he was difficult to understand. "What's he say, Tom?" Yargi asked. The situation came clear. Chief Yargi had little tolerance for unfamiliarity with his language. Tom had thrown himself into mastering Muskogee as well as Creek customs and dress when Yargi brought him into the nation as his property. This white man had the foresight to bring his own interpreter, but Yargi didn't approve of the abuse of the language in the black man's mouth. "I am Yataka for Chief Yargi," Tom said in English. Chief Yargi asked the reason for your visit. This time the white man spoke, in English. "I'm passing through, writing about Indians in Alabama." Tom wasn't sure how much Muskogee the black man really understood, so he mostly performed a straight translation of the white man's words for Yargi without commentary or shading. "We feed them," Yargi said in Muskogee to Tom, "then they go." "The chief invites you to sup," Tom translated, "before going on your way. You and your slave." The black man straightened up at this last, his face suddenly flinty. "I am not his," he said in English, pulling his blanket tighter around his shoulders. "I am a free man, belonging only to myself. I have papers for proof. I travel without permission." This man was as dark as Tom, maybe even a shade darker, his hair kinky beneath his turban, his face broad without the slightest hint of Indian blood. Every black man, woman, boy, or girl Tom had ever known was owned by white or Indian. Masters differed in temperament and treatment, in wealth and in influence, but so far as he knew, any with one drop of Negro blood were slaves. Tom looked to Yargi, but his master had scant interest in an exchange in a language he didn't understand and which promised to impact him little. Still, Tom translated the black man's words, the Freedom Declaration. Yargi didn't comment, but didn't laugh either, or protest the absurdity of the claim. A free black man. Sometimes you had to see a thing to know the possibility of it. He'd ask Old Turtle later. "Mightn't I ask Chief Yargi about his life as Upper Creek in Alabama?" asked the white man. Tom translated. The chief grabbed up his bow and a full quiver of arrows. "Have cook lay supper and food for them to carry away," he said in Muskogee. "Chief Yargi meets with the council now, but asked me to see you eat and drink to your fill. He'd get these men to himself before sending them off. If only he could learn how one came by freedom, with papers as proof, or glimpse a world beyond an Alabama plantation." The white man seemed particularly disappointed, but that didn't burden Chief Yargi. He pulled Tom to the side. "From now, won't be two Toms," Yargi whispered in Muskogee. "Your name is Cow Tom, and his is Horse Tom, and you come soon as I call." "Yes, Chief Yargi." Yargi headed toward the woods without a backward glance, leaving Cow Tom to handle the visitors. Later, alone, with the two men fed and on their way, Tom found the twinkle of the star that never moved in the northern sky to accept his nightly prayers. He conjured up his most precious memory, his mother, her calloused hands so warm at the nape of his neck, humming some nameless, soothing tune as she tilted his head and spooned her concocted herbal brew between his lips as he lay sick of a childhood disease on a straw pallet. A pause to her crooning, and something cool on his forehead, and the timbre of her voice, rich enough to tame pain or hurt, that he still played back the melody of it whenever he fell into sadness. "Come, boy," she said then, "my Tom, be well. You're meant for special things. Be well now." He missed her. His star called to him. First, he wished his mother safe. He wished she would come back. He wished for guidance on how to be special. And now he had something new to add to his list. He wished he was paper-free.